All right, so we talked about energy levels last time. And remember, we have the N number, okay? So we've got over here, N. N, maybe. N equals 1. N equals 2. N equals 3. N equals 4. N equals 5. N equals 6. And N equals 7. All right, so, and we also talked about the shapes. Remember, we've got the S, the P, the D, and the F. Okay, remember the S has 1 suborbital, the P has 3, D has 5, and F has 7. Okay, so those are the orbitals. So when we look at the periodic table and we're thinking about electrons, okay, there's a way of writing how many electrons represent each element. Okay, so each element has a certain number of electrons in it. Okay, and there's a way to write the electron configuration. Okay, and that's what we're going to look at now. Again, remember, that we've got a neutral atom. Okay, that means there's no charge. Okay, and on our neutral atom, so this would be the number of protons. Okay, I'm going to put a positive because those are positive. Okay, is equal to the number of electrons. Okay, and so remember the the number of protons tells us the atomic number. So let's look at the periodic table. We've got the periodic table. And we've got the number, the atomic number, okay? It's kind of blurry here, but here you can see 1. Okay, then we go over here to helium, and that's 2. Down here, 3, 4. To boron, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it just keeps on going. Okay, so that's how many protons, and that's also how many electrons there are. So how do we write that? How do we write the number of electrons? Okay, so one thing I'd like you to know is that the electrons, okay, will fill the first energy level, okay, before the second, okay, and then the second will fill before the third will fill before the fourth. Okay, so electrons fill the first energy level before the second, or electrons fill the lowest energy level before they move on to higher ones. Okay, so this means that electrons will fill in this order: S, okay, then they'll go to the P, then they'll go to the D, and then they'll start filling the F. All right. Remember, each orbital has 2 electrons. All right. So I'm going to zoom out just a bit, okay, and I'm going to come over here, and let's look at how these are written. Okay, so the electron configuration, or the electron config, okay, has basically 3 parts. Okay, it's going to have a number, it's going to have a letter, And it's going to have up here the number of electrons that are in that level. Okay, so the 1 is our energy level. The S, okay, is the sublevel. So energy level, remember that's N. The sublevel, that's going to be the S, P, D, or F. And then this number up here, this superscript, is the number of electrons. All right, so this is how we write it. We write the energy level, the orbital, and then the number of electrons. Okay, so if we look at hydrogen, okay, so remember hydrogen is way over here on the periodic table, hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen has, it's got a 1s. Okay, so this is the 1s sublevel, the n equals 1. Okay, so there's 1. It's in the s sublevel. Okay, and it just has 1 electron. So here's hydrogen. It has 1 electron. Okay, and so what we do is we're just going to keep adding these electrons. So if we look at helium, okay, it's in the n equals 1 sublevel, sorry, energy level. It's in the s sublevel, okay, and it has 2 electrons. All right, so let's look at lithium. Okay, so we're going to look at lithium. That's down here. Okay, so lithium. All right, so we've got n equals 1. Okay, so that's going to be the 1. So basically what has to happen is we have to account for every single sublevel. Okay, so remember, hydrogen and helium, okay, we've basically filled up our first orbital. Okay, so we've got our 1s2 orbital is filled up. Okay, so that's basically hydrogen and helium. Helium is 1s2. Now lithium is on a new level. Okay, so we've filled up our first energy level. Now we have to go to our second. If you remember back to our chart, okay, what's going to happen here is now we go to the second energy level. Okay, this is still the s orbital. Okay, so this part right here, okay, these are, remember, our s. Over here we've got our p, and then we've got our d in the middle, and our f down here. Okay, so lithium is still in the s sublevel, and it has 1 electron. Okay, now what happens here is something called the Aufbau principle, which tells us that electrons enter sublevels with the lowest energy first. So these s sublevels have the lowest energy levels. Okay. Now let's look at N. Okay, so let's look at N. So nitrogen, okay, is atomic number 7, so it has 7 electrons. Okay, so nitrogen has 7 electrons. So how do we write that in electron configuration? Okay, so I know that I have my 1s filled. So my 1s2 is 2 electrons. So this is helium. Okay, now I'm going to have to fill up my lithium and beryllium. So this is my 2s2. So remember, 2s1 is lithium, 2s2 is beryllium, And then I'm going to go across the periodic table, and now I'm in the 2p orbital. So what I'm going to do is I go from boron is going to be 1 electron, carbon is 2, and then the nitrogen is 3. So there are 3 electrons, okay, in the 2p orbital. So here's my n equals 1. Okay, this is n equals 2. Okay, so I'm in the second energy level. I filled up the 2s, and then I have 3 electrons in the 2p. Okay, and so basically that's going to keep on recurring. So let's look at magnesium. Okay, so magnesium has 10, 11, 12 electrons. Okay, so how do I get to magnesium using my electron configuration? So remember, it's going to fill up the 1s first. Okay, so there's my 2 electrons in my 1s. It's going to fill the 2s next. So 2s and 2 electrons. Okay, then I've got my 2p. Now the 2p is all filled up, right? So I can fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 electrons. 2p6, okay, tells me that my 1s, or my first energy level, is filled. My second energy level is filled. Now I'm going to go on to my third energy level. So magnesium, okay, is still in the s block. Okay, so this is going to be 3s. And how many electrons do I have in my s block? 1, 2. 2. So this is the third energy level, n equals 3. All right. So that just keeps on continuing, on and on and on. And we'll talk about what comes next in the next video.